Welcome back. Take a slow breath and let the world fall quiet around you, because the chapter we enter now is not like the ones before. Until this point, my life had moved gently, guided by duty, shaped by travel, shadowed by secrets I did not yet understand. But in what comes next, the first true turning of my fate begins. New powers rise, new eyes watch me, and the choices I once believed were simple grow heavier with every passing day. In this part of my story, you will hear how the road with Honest carried me into the heart of a world I was not prepared for, a world of ambition, danger, and the first quiet tremors of the destiny waiting for me in Babylon. Breathe softly and walk beside me. The next chapter begins now, and nothing after this will ever be the same. The desert did not break us, the mountains did not slow us. The wide plains of the east, empty, endless, shimmering like heated bronze, did nothing but sharpen our hunger. But beyond all that, beyond the lands I had known, and the maps that had guided Assyrian generals for generations, there lay a world so alive, so humid, so thunderous, with unseen creatures, that even the bravest soldiers shifted in their saddles when they saw it. India, not the idea, not the rumor, not the distant challenge whispered across borders. The real India, wild, unfenced, breathing, radiant, and waiting. It did not greet us with silence. It greeted us with sound, the thunder of monsoon clouds, the hiss of rain that burst suddenly from a sky swollen with heat, the shrieks of birds, the color of emeralds, the bellow of beasts hidden within the green darkness, and beneath it all, a rhythm, a heartbeat, the heartbeat of a kingdom that had lived too long without fearing foreign armies, the heartbeat of a king who believed himself equal to the gods. I rode at the front, armor damp with the first rains, helm glistening, hair clinging to my cheeks, eyes fixed on the horizon. Behind me thundered 10,000 Assyrian warriors, archers, spearmen, cavalry, engineers, siege masters, scouts, men hardened by deserts, mountains, and the long roads that scar empires into maps. But even as they marched, even as their discipline rang like iron through the jungle path, I sensed it, a new fear blooming inside them. Not the fear of death, not the fear of battle, but the fear of the unknown. I felt it too, and yet beneath that fear lay something stronger, fierce exhilaration. I had not marched across half the world to turn back at the first roar of beasts in the dark. It happened 3 days after we crossed the river that marked India's westernmost reach. We had made camp on a patch of high ground, the only place dry enough to rest without sinking. Knee-deep into mud, the jungle steamed around us, breathing in waves as though the earth itself exhaled mist. Drums echoed somewhere far away, not ours, never ours. When the sound reached my ears, I froze. It was rhythmic, but not human, not military, not ceremonial. A low thudding, deep enough to shake the ground. like the footfall of a giant. My horse snorted, eyes rolling. My general stepped toward me. Majesty, one whispered, "What is that?" The ground trembled again. A slow, heavy pulse, then another, closer, louder, and then the jungle parted, not gently, not softly, but like a wall of green torn open by a god's hand. The soldiers gasped. Some cursed under their breath. Some stepped back despite themselves. What emerged was not a creature. It was a mountain covered in armor, an elephant, the largest I had ever imagined, towering over horses, men, and even the tallest Assyrian standards. Its tusks curved like twin scimitars of bone. Its ears flapped with a force that stirred the humid air. Its hide was draped in embroidered cloth, the color of violet gold, and atop it, in a tower adorned with gems, stood Indian warriors, faces painted in fierce colors, spears gleaming. My breath caught, not in fear, in awe. I had seen beasts, I had seen monstrous men, I had seen entire cities collapse, but nothing in my life prepared me for the sight of an armored elephant marching toward my lines, as calmly as a god walking across the earth. One of my generals whispered, That cannot be killed. I answered without turning my head. Anything that bleeds can be killed. But even I knew this beast bled differently. The elephant trumpeted, a sound that tore through the jungle, like the cry of a breaking world. Birds burst from trees. Horses screamed. Even my own heart hesitated. Behind the first beast emerged a second, and a third, and then a line, no, a wall of elephants, each armored, each crowned with warriors, each carrying banners that shimmered in the wet heat, a force older than our sense of war, a force older than our understanding of battle. The drums quickened, the ground shook, a haze of dust and steam swirled around them, as though the earth and sky were bowing. My soldiers broke formation for a moment, the briefest crack in our iron discipline. As the elephants marched forward with impossible calm, I rode toward the front lines, alone, unflinching. "Majesty," a commander cried, "you must fall back." "No," I said, and my voice rang louder than the drums. I moved my horse forward until I was a single breath from the first elephant's shadow. I lifted my face, met its dark, ancient eye, saw myself reflected in it, small, defiant, aflame with will. The beast exhaled, a hot, humid gust that smelled of leaves and thunder and earth, and I whispered, "So, this is the strength that would challenge Babylon." The elephant raised its trunk, its breath like a storm wind, and I smiled. "Good." Then battle erupted, not the ordered, measured, predictable battle I had known, not the clash of shield lines, not the dance of cavalry, not the ascent of siege towers. This battle was chaos, raw, living, an orchestra of terror and thunder. The elephants charged, not slowly, not ponderously, but with a speed that defied their size. They smashed through the front ranks, spears, shattering against their hides, shields splintering like clay pots. Men flew, horses stumbled, the earth shook. Indian archers loosed volleys from atop the towers, arrows raining like golden hail. I rode into the storm. I do not know if history will believe that. Historians soften queens into symbols. They forget that symbols are carved from blood. I entered the chaos because my men needed to see me do it. A queen who watches from afar is a queen who loses empires. Form, lines, I shouted through the roar. Cut between them, not at them. Fire at the riders, not the beasts. A general yelled. They're unstoppable. I screamed back. No creature is unstoppable, only misunderstood. We changed formation. Archers targeted the mahouts, the elephant guides. Spearmen attacked the beasts' sides, where their armor was thin. Engineers launched flaming pots of oil to force the elephants aside. The jungle became a furnace. Men slipped in blood. Elephants bellowed in fury. Warriors screamed in languages I did not know. The air burned with smoke, sweat, fear, resolve. And all the while I fought not from a distant hill, not behind shields, not hidden among guards. I rode at the heart of the battle, cutting down 2 riders who leapt from their tower, blocking an arrow with my shield, feeling the hot wind of an elephant's charge so close. It nearly tore me from the saddle. Death brushed against me, again and again, soft as silk, sharp as bone. But I would not fall. I would not give India. The story of a queen trampled into the earth. Hours passed. The sun climbed overhead. The monsoon clouds thickened, bruised, and swollen. At last, after relentless assault, after losses on both sides, after the ground itself seemed to sob beneath us, the elephants withdrew, slowly, with dignity, not defeated, but called back by King Stavrobate's command. The jungle swallowed them. The drums faded. The thunder of their retreat rolled into silence. We stood among the bodies, among the broken branches, among the crushed earth, and my soldiers, men hardened by decades of war, looked at me not with fear, but with a fierce, burning loyalty. Majesty, whispered one captain, you faced them like a goddess. No, I said, I faced them like a queen. And inside, beneath that fire, beneath that triumph, I felt something else, a tremor, a warning. Because this brutal, terrifying, magnificent battle was only the beginning. India had tested me, but the true trial had not yet come. King Stavrobates was waiting somewhere beyond the rivers, beyond the jungle, beyond the horizon, and he had not yet shown his full strength. He would not rest until he broke me, or knelt before me, and I would not turn back until one of us fell. I once believed I understood the shape of war. I believed it had edges, lines one could follow, strategies one could master, rules one could bend without breaking. India taught me otherwise. India taught me that war, when waged against a king who sees himself as divine, is not a contest of armies, but a collision of worlds. And in that collision, someone must crack first. I had assumed it would be him. I was wrong. For 7 days after our first battle, the jungle swallowed us whole. We marched deeper, further from Babylon than any Assyrian soldier had ever dreamed of going. Humidity clung to our armor, soaking cloth and leather, until everything smelled of damp earth and tired men. Insects stung like embers, snakes watched from branches. The air itself hummed with unseen life, and always, the feeling that we were being watched. My scouts returned with reports I did not like. Majesty. They vanish in the trees like smoke. Majesty. They leave no footprints, only the marks of dragged branches. Majesty. The elephants are not retreating, they are circling. Circling. The word curled cold inside my ribs. We were the invaders, yet it felt as though we walked inside a trap, designed centuries before our arrival. Still, I pressed forward, because pride has its own heartbeat, its own breath, its own hunger, and I, for all my vision, all my power, all my gardens in the sky, was not immune to that hunger. I wanted the king who had insulted me. I wanted him under my heel. I wanted him to taste what it meant to challenge a queen who had carved wonders from stone. Desire is a dangerous companion. It blinds even the wise. The ambush came at dawn, not like desert ambushes, where you hear horses before you see them, not like mountain ambushes, where rocks crash down like angry gods. This ambush came like a whisper, soft, sudden, lethal. The jungle shifted, birdsong stopped, the mist thickened, and out of the silence came arrows, not from one direction, but from all, a deadly rain, silent, precise, arrows with tips carved from black stone, tips that whistled softly as they flew. My men raised shields, shields thudded, cries rang out, blood spattered the mud. Form up, I shouted, shields above, shields forward. But the arrows did not stop. They fell like a monsoon of death. A soldier beside me grunted. An arrow lodged in his throat. Another stumbled. 3 arrows sunk in his shield. A 4th in his leg. The jungle trembled. And then a sound I had begun to dread, with a queen's private terror. The deep, resonant drumming of elephant feet. A heartbeat of the earth. The trees parted like curtains, and King Stabberbait's army stepped into view, not charging, not rushing, walking calmly, purposefully, as if they already knew they had won. I rode to the front lines. Of course I did. A queen does not cower behind her men, but when I reached the ridge and looked down at what moved toward us, even I felt my breath falter. Elephants, more than before, armored, painted, massive as hills. Some bore archers, some bore spear throwers, some bore stone-throwing mechanisms that launched boulders with terrifying ease. But the beasts were not what grounded the blood in my veins. It was the king, Stabberbaits himself, riding the largest elephant, his armor woven with gold thread, his skin streaked with war, paint the color of sunfire, his spear longer than 2 men. He looked at me, not my army, not my generals, me and raised his spear in a gesture that was both challenge and prophecy. I had been challenged before by kings, by armies, by fate, but never, never had a man looked at me like that. Not with hatred, not with arrogance, with inevitability, as if he was the wall, and I the wave. The battle was unlike any that came before it. If the first clash with India had been a storm, this was a cataclysm. Elephants charged in formation, a wall of muscle and metal. Archers rained fire. Spearmen surged from the flanks. Drummers kept rhythm that thundered through bone. My men tried to adapt. We had trained, we had learned, we had studied. But India was learning too. They targeted our engineers first. Clever, cruel, then the chariots, then the cavalry. It was like fighting the jungle itself. Roots grabbing ankles, mud pulling at feet, the air so thick it stole breath. I fought, I killed, I rode into openings and turned them into paths. But the elephants got above the elephants. One roared, a deep, agonizing sound, as arrows struck its flank from our archers. It panicked, not away, toward us. It crashed into the left wing of our formation. Men scattered like dried leaves. Horses broke. The ground shook. I heard bones snap, loud as branches breaking in storms. A soldier screamed, "Majesty, the left is broken." Another shouted, "The king's elephant is advancing." Another, "We must fall back. We must." "No," I roared. "We hold the line. We hold it." But the truth was cracking inside me. We were not holding anything. We were being swallowed. Then came the moment I will remember, even after death. A spear, thrown from atop one of the king's elephants, whistled through the air. It was meant for me. A guard saw it first. He pushed his horse into its path. The spear pierced him through the chest. He fell, dead before he hit the ground. My vision blurred, not with fear, with fury so sharp I tasted blood in my mouth. I charged, straight at the king, straight at the largest elephant, straight at death. Arrows flew past me. Spears grazed my armor. Mud splashed. Shouts echoed. I saw the king's eyes widen, not in fear, but in acknowledgement. He recognized me as an equal. He braced his spear. I raised my sword. Our armies clashed around us. In a roar so vast, the jungle itself seemed to scream. And then, at the last instant, my horse stumbled in the mud, just enough for the king's spear to miss my heart. It struck my shoulder instead. A white-hot explosion of pain tore down my arm. I gasped, but did not fall. The world tilted. The sky spun. Blood drenched my armor. My men screamed my name. The king shouted something in his language, a command. The elephants advanced, and I, Queen of Babylon, builder of wonders, breaker of cities, felt my knees weaken. For the first time since childhood, since the river tried to take me, since destiny claimed me, I felt myself collapsing. The battlefield blurred. My men fought to reach me. The elephants closed in. The king lifted his spear again, this time to finish what he had begun. I tried to rise. My body refused. Pain swallowed the edges of the world. And the last thing I saw before darkness drowned me was the king's shadow towering over me, spear tip glinting, and the realization I had come to conquer India. But India, for the first time, had conquered me. When I opened my eyes, the world was no longer made of light. It was made of pain, a deep, primal, bone-carving pain that did not ask permission, did not soften, did not relent. For a moment, I forgot where I was, forgot who I was. All I knew was the agony burning through my shoulder, white, sharp, merciless. All I heard was rain, hard rain, monsoon rain, a sheet of water that pounded the earth like the drums of the gods themselves. I blinked, trying to breathe, trying to understand. Shapes swam before me, voices, footsteps squelching in mud. A torch flickered. Someone cursed softly in Akkadian. Then a hand touched my cheek. Majesty. She's awake, I gasped. The world snapped into focus. I was lying beneath a canopy, hastily draped from torn banners. Rain hammered the cloth overhead. Mud soaked the ground beneath my back. The air reeked of blood, sweat, and wet earth. My captain, Ashur Nadin, loyal, scarred, unbreakable, knelt beside me. His face was streaked with mud and grief. Majesty, he said softly, voice trembling with a man's terror of losing the one person he swore to protect. You were struck, you fell. We thought he could not finish. Behind him, I saw what they had tried to shield from my view. The wounded, hundreds of them, bandaged with torn tunics, lying in rows under makeshift shelters, moaning, shivering, dying. The jungle was alive with rain and the distant call of beasts circling the wounded like shadows with teeth. And farther still, beyond the trees, the faint, mocking echo of Indian war drums. We had lost, not a skirmish, not a maneuver, a battle, a real one, a battle that left the air heavy with the metallic taste of failure. I tried to rise. Pain blazed through me. My vision swam. Ashur-nadin caught my shoulders. Majesty, please stay down. No, I whispered through clenched teeth, my voice raw. No, I must stand. You cannot. The wound is too deep. I am your queen, I growled, forcing my trembling arm to push against the muddy ground. And a queen does not bleed lying down. He hesitated. Then he helped me. The world tilted, darkening at the edges, but I held on, jaw clenched, fingers digging into his arm until I could stand upright. Rain drenched me instantly, warm at first, then cold, the cold of reality, all around me. My men watched, silent, bleeding, exhausted, broken. Yet when they saw me standing, shaking, pale, blood pouring down my arm, they straightened, rage tightened my throat. How many? I whispered. Ashur-nadin did not want to answer. But queens do not ask questions. They do not expect to hear. How many? I repeated. He swallowed. Too many. How many? He looked away. 2,000 dead, he whispered. 3,000 wounded. A pause, and more missing. My breath caught. The jungle absorbed the silence like a sponge. So, I murmured, India has shown its teeth. Ashur-nadin bowed his head. Majesty, this enemy is different. They move like shadows, strike from nowhere, vanish into the trees. Even our scouts. He shook his head, shame carving lines across his muddy cheeks. We are blind here. Blind, a word I hated more than defeat. Night fell hard, heavy, relentless. The rain stopped, but the heat rose in its place, thick, suffocating, carrying the stench of blood and rot. The wounded groaned. Some whispered prayers. Some cried for mothers long dead. I walked among them, ignoring the throbbing in my shoulder, ignoring the dizziness that threatened to drown me. They looked up when I passed. Some tried to bow, some reached for my fingers, some just whispered my name, a cracked, fragile sound like pottery breaking. Majesty, Queen, Semiramis, and every time I heard it, my heart twisted, because I had led them here. I had brought them to this jungle. I had told them we would conquer the edge of the world. And now the edge of the world was cutting back. Later, in the privacy of the dim tent made from shattered banners, a medic with steady hands and tired eyes peeled my armor away. The spear wound burned like liquid fire when he pressed a cloth soaked in alcohol against the ragged flesh. I bit down on my own wrist, hard, so I wouldn't scream. He worked in silence for a long time. When it was done, he bowed deeply. Majesty, you should have died. I looked at him. Rain dripped from the edge of the tent. The world smelled of smoke, mud, and bitter herbs. Then why didn't I? I whispered. He hesitated. Because fate has not finished with you. When he left, I sat alone. Finally, the weight of it all broke through my armor. I pressed my good hand over my face, not to weep, not yet, but to hold myself together. They think I am unbreakable. I whispered into the dimness. They think I am carved from stone. I looked at my shaking fingers, but stones crack. For the first time, since the river saved me, since the mountains bowed, since Babylon crowned me, I felt small, not fragile, not defeated, small, a single woman, in the heart of a jungle that did not care about crowns or gardens or empires. A queen bleeding in a foreign land, a queen who had dared to chase a horizon that was now chasing her back. Outside, thunder rolled, war drums answered, India, and the storm sang to each other, and I, wounded, furious, alive, listened, but smallness is not the same as surrender. Queens break differently than men. Men break like spears, snapping in the middle. Queens break like fire, quietly at first, but ready to burn the world. Once the spark catches, I wiped the blood from my palm, lifted my chin, breathed through the pain. No, I whispered into the humid darkness. No, I will not die here. The storm outside cracked with lightning, as if answering, I will not crawl back to Babylon. I will not bow to an Indian king. I will not be remembered as the queen who chased glory and found a grave. I pressed my hand against my bandaged shoulder and felt the pulse beneath. Steady, stubborn, alive, I will rise, I whispered, and India will tremble. The jungle listened, and in its deep, ancient heart, I felt it whisper back, then rise. Before dawn, I gathered my captains. They expected a queen half dead, broken, defeated. What they found was something else. I stood tall, tired. Yes, bleeding. Yes, but unbowed. A queen, forged in fire and pain, sharper than the spear that had pierced her. We will not retreat, I said quietly. Their eyes widened, shock, fear, a spark of hope. We will not crawl back across deserts. We will not surrender the East, and we will not kneel. Ashur-nadin stepped forward. But, Majesty, what will we do? I met each gaze around me, one by one, until they felt my will pressing against theirs. We will rebuild, I said. Regroup, learn their shadows, steal their strategies, break their elephants, and when we rise again, we will rise with the fury of every fallen man. Silence, then a murmur, soft at first, then louder, then steady as drums. Semiramis, Semiramis, Semiramis. Not adoration, not flattery. Faith, hard and battle-born faith. And in that moment, with my soldiers' voices rising through the rain-soaked dawn, I realized India had not broken me. It had forged me. Blade from stone, fire from flesh, queen from woman. And the war had only begun. They thought I would turn back. They thought the wound in my shoulder, the blood lost in the mud, the terror of the elephants, and the chaos of the jungle would break my will. But they had mistaken pain for surrender and fear for retreat. Pain sharpens, fear teaches, defeat awakens. When dawn broke after the ambush, I was awake long before the sun. The air was wet and metallic, still carrying the scent of yesterday's blood. In the jungle around us, beasts stirred, tigers, moving like shadows through tall grass, monkeys screeching in the canopy, fast-winged birds gliding between shafts of light. A different world, a different war, a different test, and I was ready. The first thing I needed was understanding. India was not a kingdom of wide plains, or predictable winds, or gentle rivers. India was alive, green, humid, breathing. It moved, it hid, it listened. So I decided to listen too. I began with the guides, hunters who had tracked tigers long before any foreign army arrived. They were quiet men, barefoot, with eyes that glowed amber in the shadows. They watched us with the patience of predators. At first, they refused to help. Assyrians do not survive here, their leader said in his thick, forest-warmed accent. This land eats strangers. I stepped forward, hampered by pain, weak from blood loss, but standing. It startled him. He had expected a broken queen, not the storm that remained. This land eats the careless, I said softly, not the determined. His gaze drifted to my bandaged shoulder, then back to my eyes. You bleed, he said. All queens bleed, I answered. The difference is how quickly we stop. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he bowed his head, not fully, not as a subject, but with the respect one hunter gives another. We will show you the Tiger Road, he said. The Tiger Road was not a road at all. It was a secret, a network of hidden trails, used by hunters and beasts alike, to move silently through the jungle. We walked in single file, mud sucking at our boots, vines brushing our armor, the air pulsing with heat. Sometimes the guide stopped suddenly and raised a hand. We froze, not daring to breathe. In the shadows, striped shapes prowled, tigers watching us with fire-lit eyes. One moved so close, I could hear its breath, hot and slow. I met its gaze, golden, ancient, more judgmental than any priest. You and I whispered beneath my breath, have something in common. It blinked once, then vanished into leaves. With the silence of a falling star, the guide exhaled. You should have died, he whispered. I smiled faintly. I hear that often. The Tiger Road taught us everything India had tried to hide, where the elephants rested after long marches, where the river narrowed, sharp enough for ambush, where the jungle thinned and fire could spread quickly, where the king's scouts camped, thinking themselves unseen, where the enemy chariots became useless in thick mud, where the high ground curved just enough to give archers advantage. Every secret soaked into my mind, like ink into parchment. India had used the jungle against me, like a sword. Now that sword was in my hand. Back at camp, I called my generals. Some still doubted, some still feared, some still bled. But when I unrolled the new map, sketched with the hunter's knowledge, their eyes widened. We know their routes now, I said. We know their rivers. We know their rhythm. I touched a point on the map, a narrow valley flanked by cliffs and a thin, treacherous river bend. This, I whispered, is where we make our stand. Ashur nodding, leaned in. Majesty, that is a place for ambush. Yes, I said, for hours we abandoned heavy armor. For lighter gear, we stripped banners from poles to avoid detection. We covered our horses' hooves with softened leather to silence their steps. Unguided by the tiger hunters, we moved through the jungle like ghosts. Our men were exhausted, wounded, low in morale, but purpose is a strange kind of nourishment. I felt it in their eyes, the hunger for redemption, the need to avenge the dead, the spark of fury, waiting for a queen to give it form. I give it full, night after night. I led them through the dark, my shoulder throbbing, my breath uneven, my heart iron hard. If a queen cannot bleed, she cannot lead. The valley was narrow, dense with ferns and whetstone. We hid above the cliffs, archers behind trees, spearmen crouching in crevices, engineers ready with oil pots, hunters lying silent in the moss. And then we waited, hours, long, slow hours, thick with humidity and mosquitoes. I did not move, not even to shift the weight of my wound. A queen who leads must learn stillness, the kind of stillness that animals understand. Then drums, deep, steady, approaching. My breath slowed. The elephants arrived first. Dozens, armored, magnificent, terrifying, painted red for war, gold dripping from their foreheads, tusks gleaming like curved moons. Warriors marched beside them, shields glistening in the sun, faces marked with ritual ash. And there, towering above them, the king, Stavro Bates, the man who had struck me, the man who had nearly ended me. His spear glowed in the light. My fingers tightened around my bow, not to kill him, not yet. Some enemies deserve a slower ending. He scanned the cliffs, suspicious, wary, instinct sharp, but the jungle hid us. The fog cloaked us. The river whispered over our sound. He signaled his army forward, into the trap. When the king's forces reached the center of the valley, I raised my hand. Every muscle in my arm burned. Every heartbeat pulsed against the wound under my bandages. But my voice was steady. Now the valley exploded. Arrows rained from the cliffs, 1,000 needles of fire and fury. Engineers held pots of flaming oil that shattered across the ground, igniting in bright, ravenous flame. Spearmen rushed from the shadows with war cries that shook even the elephants. Hunters released ropes and nets designed specifically to snare massive beasts. The elephants panicked. Some reared, some retreated, some slipped on the oil-slicked stone. Some turned on the warriors who guided them. Chaos, beautiful, roaring chaos. The king roared orders, but his voice was lost in the thunder of beasts and the screams of his own men. I rode down the cliff path and into the fray. Rain began to fall again, hard, heavy, blurring the world into silver streaks. Lightning cracked the sky. Thunder rattled the bones of the earth. A storm queen, entering a storm of her own making. My soldiers saw me and roared with renewed life. The jungle shook with their fury. We became the storm. An elephant charged me, its eyes wild, its tusks red with the blood of men. I held my ground. At the last moment, my archers hit its mahout, and the beast veered sideways, crashing into a boulder. With earth-shaking force, another, draped in gold armor, swung its trunk toward me. My captains drove spears beneath its armor, precise and merciless. The giants fell one by one, not because they were weak, because we had learned. At last, Stabber Bates found me. We faced each other through rain and flame, elephants screaming around us, men dying at our feet. You should have stayed in Babylon. He spat. You should have stayed silent. I answered. He raised his spear. I raised mine. Our armies clashed around us like waves around two mountains. He was stronger than I expected, faster, fiercer. Our spears collided, metal screeched, lightning flashed. Every blow sent fire down my wounded arm. Every movement tasted of agony. But I did not fall, because I was not fighting to win. I was fighting to reclaim everything he had taken. My pride, my blood, my breath, my destiny. He swung downward. I deflected. He lunged. I pivoted. He was rage. I was resolve. He was a storm. I was the storm that answered it. Just when my blade found its opening, just when I felt the final strike surge through my arm, the king's elephant reared violently. A soldier behind me screamed, "Majesty, move!" I turned, and that instant was my undoing. A second elephant, not the king's, charged through the chaos. I had no time to block. Its tusk grazed my hip, not a deep wound, but enough to throw me sideways. My foot slipped in the mud, my balance failed. Pain shot through my entire body. The king saw his chance. He raised his spear and struck, not a killing blow, a claiming blow. It hit my side, deep, burning, stealing my breath in a single violent instant. I fell to one knee. My soldiers screamed. The hunters shouted. Chaos erupted. The king lowered his spear to finish me. But just then, the ground beneath us shook. Not from elephants, from the cliffs. A landslide triggered by our burning oil. And the weight of the beasts collapsed. Rocks crashed. Earth split. Warriors scattered. The king's elephant stumbled. The king fought for balance. His spear missed my heart by the width of a breath. My captain seized me, dragging me backward. Before the king could recover, I could barely breathe. Blood soaked my armor. My vision pulsed. I was carried away, fading, while starbarbates screamed my name like a curse. Swallowed by the storm, we retreated, not in panic, not in defeat, in strategy, in survival, in fury. India had felt my wrath, but I had not yet conquered it. And I, Queen, Storm, builder of wonders, breaker of kings, was not finished. The jungle swallowed us once more, and as darkness closed in, as pain dragged me toward unconsciousness again, I whispered to the rain, "This is not over." The rain answered, the thunder answered, the earth answered, and somewhere in the distance, perhaps even the gods answered too. The wound in my side burned, like a brand pressed by an angry god. Every breath scraped through my ribs, as if sand had filled my lungs. Every step felt stolen from death. Yet I walked. I walked because a queen who does not walk becomes a memory in the mouths of frightened men. I walked because my soldiers watched me, bleeding, limping, but unbroken. And if I faltered even for a moment, their faith would falter with me. India had wounded me twice, once in flesh, once in pride, but it had not yet taken what mattered most, my will. And as long as will remained, the war remained. We retreated into the highlands, a place where the jungle thinned and the river carved deep scars into the earth, a place where the ground held stories older than either of our kingdoms, the river of arrows. The hunters called it because its currents were swift, its banks narrow, its cliffs perfect for ambush or massacre, a place of fate, a place where empires learned humility, a place where kings and queens met themselves. Our camp was a wounded thing, a skeleton of tents, a graveyard of broken shields. My generals gathered in a circle, faces gaunt with exhaustion, eyes dimmer than the torches between us. A hush settled when I approached. I knew what they were thinking, knew it because I saw the truth mirrored in their faces. We cannot win another direct clash with India's elephants, not like these, not wounded, not weary, not here. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Ashur-nadin stepped forward. Majesty, he said softly, your wounds are mine. I cut in, and irrelevant. He swallowed. India is not retreating. They prepare for another strike. If they catch us here, they won't. I said it calmly, coldly, with a certainty that startled even me. Ashur-nadin frowned. What do you see? I looked beyond the torches, beyond the river, beyond the trees. I saw truth. India will come for us, I said, here, at the river, because this is where they believe we are weakest. And are we? He whispered. I turned to him. No, I said, we are not weak. We are wounded, and wounds can become weapons. Their heads lifted, hope flickered. I leaned forward. We end this at the river, not with brute force, not with a clash of spears and elephants. We end it with minds. The men listened, silent, still, waiting. I looked at each of them, the scarred, the loyal, the exhausted, the furious, and spoke the plan. We let them cross, and we drown them. Their eyes widened, not in fear, in revelation. The next morning, we reshaped the world. Engineers dug channels hidden by reeds. Hunters lured beasts away from our chosen ground. Archers wove nets of vines and fibers, coating them with oil. My strongest men, the ones still able to move freely, waded into the cold water and hammered stakes beneath the surface, where no enemy could see. Every step hurt, every motion radiated fire up my spine. But pain had become familiar, an old companion I no longer feared. Ashur-nadin begged me to rest. I refused. I must bleed where my men bleed, I told him. Otherwise, their wounds become heavier than mine. He bowed as though those words were a blessing. By nightfall, we were ready, and India came. They always came when pride demanded it. Warriors marched first, shields painted bright, spears echoing in the still air, then chariots, slicing the dirt, sharp wheels gleaming, then the elephants. Oh, gods, not dozens, hundreds, a wall of giants. The sight of them should have broken us. Instead, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not doubt, resolve. The king rode at the front. Stubble-baits, gold armor, red paint, eyes like burning suns. We met across the river, two figures on opposite banks. He raised his spear. You bleed. Again, Queen, he called. His voice rolled across the water like thunder. I will finish what I began. My wound pulsed, my fingers trembled, rain threatened the sky, but my voice was iron. You began nothing, I answered, and you will end nothing. He smiled, a cruel, confident smile, then signaled his army. The ground shook. The elephants advanced. The first elephants stepped into the river. Their legs churned the water into white foam. Warriors behind them cheered. Arrows shot overhead. Drums boomed. The river roared. When the first line reached the center, I raised my hand. Now, my archers ignited the nets. Flames burst upward. A curtain of fire across the river. Elephants panicked. Warriors screamed. Chaos erupted. Then my hidden channels released. Water surged, a sudden flood, a violent current. The elephants stumbled, slipped, tumbled sideways, their massive bodies, driven by the river's rage, smashed into the ones behind them, like fallen towers. Warriors were swept away, shields vanished, screams vanished. The river swallowed them with a hungry, merciless roar. Stabber Bates shouted orders, but the river did not care. It dragged his army down, pulled men under, crushed elephants in whirlpools, ripped chariots from the mud. The river of arrows had become the river of bones. My army roared, not in triumph, in vindication, for the dead, for the wounded, for the battles we had endured. India, for the first time, railed. The king saw his forces breaking. He tried to rally them, tried to force his elephant forward, but the river betrayed him too. His mount stumbled, swayed, buckled. He fell hard into the mud, and suddenly he was no longer a god king. He was a man, a frightened man, a man gasping against the current, reaching for his spear, struggling against the tide. No one helped him, not one soldier, not one mahout, not one warrior. And that, more than the river, more than the elephants, more than the battle, was the moment the war ended. For a king who stands alone is already defeated. I watched him across the carnage, across the river, across the shattered remains of his pride. He looked up at me, eyes burning, not with hatred, with the understanding that destiny had chosen its victor. I raised my sword, not to strike, but to declare, it ends here. He bowed his head, a small bow, a painful bow, a bow a king gives when he finally understands. He's mortal. Then he withdrew, not because he wanted to, because he had no army left to fight beside him. Asterisk. And so the war with India ended. Asterisk. Not with a glorious charge, not with a queen riding into a conquered city, not with a triumphant parade. It ended knee-deep in mud, blood mixing with river water, steam rising from corpses, the jungle watching silently. It ended with surrender. That was not spoken, but understood. India remained unconquered, but broken. We remained alive, but scarred, a draw written in blood and exhaustion and the unforgiving mercy of nature. History would soften this ending, turn it into triumph. turn elephants into trophies, turn rivers into stages, turn me into legend. But the truth is this: war does not crown victors, it buries them. That night, under a sky choked with clouds, I stood alone by the river. The water murmured, as if trying to apologize for taking what it had taken. I dipped my fingers into the cold current and whispered, "Take my pain, leave me my will." The river did not answer. Rivers never answer. But the pain lessened, and the will remained. Tomorrow, I would begin the long journey back to Babylon. Tomorrow, I would carry home an army half its size, but twice as loyal. Tomorrow, I would step once more into the throne room as a queen who had faced the edge of the world and returned standing, not victorious, not defeated, transformed. And so, with the end of that chapter, a new silence settled over my life, the kind that comes when fate begins to move in places you cannot yet see. What had once felt distant was now drawing closer. People watched me differently, whispered differently, and every step I took seemed to echo louder than before. I could feel it, a shift beneath my feet, a quiet tightening of the thread that bound me to my destiny. But still, I walked on, as though nothing had changed, as though I did not sense the weight of the future leaning toward me. Before we continue, tell me, when life begins to change around you, do you notice the signs, or only recognize them once it's too late? Rest now. In the next episode, the path ahead grows sharper, and the choices before me begin to reveal their true cost. Sleep well until we meet again.